All right, everybody, welcome back to the Insiders Lounge. Today we have another special guest. Zayne, thanks for joining me, and feel free to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you for having me. Excited to be here. So I'm Zayne. I'm currently the Chief Soccer Officer at New Jersey, New York, Gotham FC and NWSL. Should I give a little bit of background about myself, or is that good for the moment in terms
No,
of?
that's great. We'll get into everything as we go through. Let's first get started with your soccer background. Where did you get started? What was the early memories from back in the day?
Yeah, I soccer has always been my first love. So it's funny. I'm from New York originally, but mainly grew up in Austin. And when I was in New York, lacrosse was actually my main sport. Played soccer as well, but then when we moved to Austin, it was 2005. I was in third grade. Like, there was no lacrosse anywhere in Austin or in Texas or probably the South for that matter. And so, but it was a blessing in disguise because then, obviously soccer is everywhere. And so I got way more involved in soccer and immediately fell in love with it. It was everything to me. And I'm an only child. Like, my memories of growing up was just me and a soccer ball outside our house, just constantly juggling and kicking against the wall and playing. Like, when I think of those earliest memories, it was really just me on my own, spending a ton of time out on the ball outside. And that became I just became super into it. There were other kids in my neighborhood that I'd play with, and they got me into watching the Premier League and all of those. So it just very quickly became a big part of who I am and what I love to do.
And then you slowly moved up the ranks, and you eventually played collegiate soccer. So let's get into the kind of the collegiate process of how did you get recruited. Tell us about your actual education at Harvard, and then we'll get into some other questions there.
Yeah, I grew up playing club. ECNL was kind of what was around when I was there. I know it's changed. There's DA, maybe ECNL is back. I'm not completely sure of what that landscape looks like right now. But I grew up playing club. In high school, I was recruited from some different schools. And obviously when Harvard comes knocking, it's really hard to say no. But I think it also, growing up, my parents really instilled in me a value for academics. And so I think kind of was this perfect fit where it was a exciting program and a good program to be a part of. And even since I've left, they continue to grow. Chris Hamblin, the head coach there at Hambo, has done amazing things with the program. But it's hard to say no to Harvard for sure. And I'm so glad that I ended up there, and feel very lucky and very grateful because it's been a huge part of who I am now, and the things that I was able to learn there, both on and off the pitch, was pretty amazing.
And then on the educational side, can you tell us a little bit about the program you decided and ended up graduating with? And then we'll get into I always like to learn if what you went and learned actually benefits you today, if you use it today and those skills that you learned over time. So let's get into kind of two of those sides.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. So I actually came in originally as a freshman, not knowing what direction I wanted to go. I was always very much a math science girl and, growing up and in high school, but knew I didn't want to go to med school. So I started off with the math science-y courses, but also because I was this is what I enjoy. I don't know what I'm going to do with it. Long story short, came across, ended up taking, I think sophomore year, Ec 10A is the intro economics course, and didn't really want to take it. I had heard horrible things about the course, but I was I have no understanding really of this. So even if it's brutal, I think it's really good information that will help me in life. And I ended up taking it and loved it because for me, it was the perfect balance of a math science, but also with social real life applications. So I honestly loved it. And then that's what I decided to study. I would say in my role right now, and again, economics is good because it can be, I think, in ways broadly applied to some different things. So there was no, Harvard is a liberal arts school, so there was no you apply to the business school as an undergrad. It's fully, if you take economics, you take those courses, but then you also have general education courses and all sorts of different realms of culture and art and all sorts of different things. And so, anyway, there was no business major. If you wanted to go into business, you studied economics. And so I studied economics. I would say, I think it's less about the actual content of what I learned that helps me now, but I think taking a major like that, like I think just the critical thinking skills and the need to like grind through a tough major, I think a lot of those skills and that practice carried over to things that help me now. I think also just in terms of, you know, it's helpful having that background if I do a lot of stuff with the salary cap. So just having an like, you know, comfortability with using numbers and playing around with stuff like that is always helpful. But I'm definitely not an economist day in, day out as some others may be.
And then was the networking side also important? Because I know we speak a lot on networking and kind of building your network throughout your career. So was that side also beneficial in terms of through your school network?
Yeah, for sure. No, massive. Like I think so much of what I've taken away from college are the people that I've had the ability to work with and learn from, and who I've seen have such high expectations for themselves in a way and such high ambitions that has really had an impact on me and allowed me to try and think about my career in a way that has no limits. Like I really credit a lot of the people that I was around, even not people necessarily that I was close with, but just people that I was in classes with, and I saw what they were doing and the way that they carried themselves and the experience that they were having. And there were just no limits that they kind of put on themselves. And that was a new thing for me to see, and I think was really helpful. But yeah, for sure. I mean, even as I navigated, because the way that I got into then the soccer world, because I was, you know, economics route, especially at a school like Harvard, like 95% of economics majors go to Wall Street or consulting at McKinsey, Bain, BCG. And I was kind of on the consulting route and got sick in college and had to take a year off. And I think that for me was this inflection point of, okay, you know, because things were not great. And so once I was feeling better, it was like, okay, I'm not wasting, you know, my life just grinding 100-hour weeks on something that I'm not passionate about. For me, it was like what I love is football, and that's what I want to do. But there was no sports management major, anything. And so in terms of connecting it back with this network piece, it was having conversations with people I knew who had gone into sports, who had graduated a few years before me, who I spoke with and tried to get advice and guidance and insight on, like, how do I navigate this? And so many of the people that they connected me with, of just having conversations, like I wouldn't be where I am without any of them or their guidance or their time. So it's played a massive role in every part of my journey, for sure. I'm very grateful.
And then what's the balance like at a school like that, balancing between your playing side and the educational side? Because you're saying that the educational side's so rigorous, but you're still balancing being a student athlete. So how does that work, and how did you manage to do that?
Yeah, it wasn't easy, I think, especially going in freshman year is a lot, as you know, you're a freshman in this like very competitive environment, you're with a new team, and there's so many things that feel uncontrollable. I think for me, what was helpful, I needed to find, so I think in high school, I didn't really have to find a system, like, you know, there's a lot going on, but I think it's a little bit,
Yeah, it's fairly manageable.
yeah, it was manageable versus now here it's like you're a D1 athlete, you're studying economics at Harvard, you're trying to balance a social life. Like there's a million different, and you know, it applies for every probably college athlete as well. Every sport, every school, every major. I think for me, what was important was finding a system that allowed me to be accountable, but that worked with me. Like I found I need to write things down. Like I can't track all my tasks digitally or on my computer. Like I need to write things down. And so, I mean, even, you know, month to month, year to year now still, and like tweaking my systems. For me, everything is like you fall back on your systems when you're tired. You fall back on your systems, whether that's your systems to track all your tasks that need to be done and being able to properly prioritize things and manage time, especially between classes and training and traveling for games. It's you kind of have to find what works for you. And for me, it's been an evolving like process of trial and error of what works well with how my brain functions, essentially. But those systems are so important, for sure.
And then you mentioned you're kind of heading down one path before heading towards the football or soccer world. And you actually had 2 internships, I believe, at 2 different companies. Can you talk through that experience of getting those internships? And then obviously you led on to going into the football world, but we'll get into that in a little bit.
Yeah, for sure. So my first one after my freshman year was doing a marketing internship at Henry Scott, which is a jewelry company headquartered out of Austin. And so, I think at that point, I think for me was actually a result of, and this is like a broader thing, I think in terms of Harvard freshman year was such an adjustment for me of like being in this environment and being this like, there was a lot of pressure at that point that I think I got sucked into in terms of like, there's so much talk within your peers of like, what internship are you doing? Are you doing an internship? I think there's this pressure that I myself, at least freshman year, got sucked into where it's like, I can't take this summer off to just, chill and recharge. I got to be furthering things and this, that, and the other. And then like my mindset is completely different from then. But at that time, I like, just to be completely honest with this situation of like, I was just kind of like, I need to have an internship. And at this point too, like I hadn't taken my economics course yet. So I still was like, not sure what I was going to do. And, it was a local, very, very successful brand and company, but headquartered in Austin. And that's where I'm from originally. So was local. And honestly, it was an amazing experience. I was working with their, reporting to their VP marketing, Katie Marston, who is unbelievable and actually has a software background, her and her husband, funny enough. So really enjoyed working with her. But I think what I really took out of that was the culture there is so positive. Everybody wanted to lift each other up and empower each other. It wasn't like a toxic environment. For me, that was the first moment of understanding how important culture is within a work environment and allowing people to feel empowered and enjoy the spaces that they're in while also, having high standards for themselves and wanting to push the needle forward and just how important that balance is. That was, for me, like I really enjoyed the people that I worked with and the culture there. And then the second one was after my sophomore year, RPC Consulting here in Austin. I think that was, so it's like a healthcare consulting firm here. That was also just wanting to get kind of more experience under my belt because I had then at this point taken an economics course and I was like, ooh, I really enjoy this. Like, I want to look down the consulting route. And so that was kind of an opportunity to do that. It was a smaller office. Again, learned a ton. I spent a lot of time in Stata, which is like a statistics data platform that I had used also through college. So I really got to hone in my understanding of that. And, I think that was also helpful for me of like, I have such a passion for soccer. I'll be honest, I don't necessarily have a passion for economic damages analysis and healthcare and medical codes. And so I think that was important. I think every experience has its purpose and serves its purpose. And I think for me, it was like, okay, I think for me, long-term to be happy in my work environment, it has to be something that inherently is interesting to me. I don't think even in that moment, I was like, I want to do football. I want to be in that world. But I think, I was like, okay, I need to have a little bit more energy in my environment. And something that really inherently piques my interest. Again, I really enjoyed I wouldn't even call it coding, but working in Stata, I did really enjoy it. But yeah, a lot like planted the seed of like, okay, I got to do something that gives me a little bit more energy, I would say. So yeah, those were kind of those first two internships there.
And then the third one, you get into Austin FC, so you're finally into the footballing realm. Can you speak on your time at Austin, and then we have a few questions aligned with that, but just the general how you got in at first, and then all the way leading up to when you left.
Yeah, it's a funny story. I enjoy telling it. So I had mentioned earlier that I got really sick in college, had to take an academic year off, and my first two experiences that I just mentioned combined with this moment of reflection of like, okay, what I want to do something that I really enjoy and matters to me and not just working for, money, or, getting to say you work for McKinsey or Goldman or whatever that is. Which like, again, you can very easily get caught up in that, I think, rat race a little bit. Was like, okay, I had this sort of almost like conviction. It's funny. I've told this story several times and I've recently kind of come across that it's not even like I didn't have this role. I was like, maybe I should get into football. I was like, I just had this sense of knowing, like, oh yeah, I'm getting into football. Like this is what makes sense. And I didn't really think twice or ever look back. But it was my senior year that I had to take. Like it was halfway through fall semester that I had to leave school. And so, it's your senior year. I'm pretty much done with most of my economics credits and this, that, and the other. And so it was, probably spring of 2019 that I was starting to have these realizations of like, oh, okay, like I want to go into football. But there was no sports management major. I was well enough at this point to start doing some research. And I was like, I just want to start getting connected with people, whoever I can in the industry, who can share any small little tidbits about their path and their journey and what they've seen as they've been in the sports industry, how it's evolved so much, even in the last several years with the rise of social media. What impact does that have? And just the rise of soccer in the US in general. And so just would try and reach out to whoever I could get connected with. A lot of them very serendipitously, even people that I to this day have not met in person and owe such a big part of my career to them, honestly. And started, just not wanting something out of them, not asking for an internship or a job, but really trying to get to the root of like what their learnings have been, wanting to absorb and learn very genuinely as much as I could about their experiences. And, one connection led to the other. Ended up getting connected with Andy Loftman at Austin FC, who is the president there. And he connected me with their senior director of business strategy, Harrison Kim, and he offered me an internship on the spot, basically. And so, yeah, that's how I kind of got involved at Austin. So I was in a business strategy intern that summer, working with Harrison Kim on some of the season ticket deposit analysis. This was still a year and a half before the team would ever pick a ball on the field. The stadium wasn't done yet. Training center wasn't done yet. Like they were still dirt lots. They hadn't even broken ground. So it was very early days. You had 12 employees at the whole club. And so it was it was 2 months or so after the team had even been confirmed at the club. And so I got to kind of help and work and be involved. And even for me, that first experience as someone who had followed soccer my whole life, especially in Europe, and, seeing just even these small insights into what it takes to run a club behind the scenes was amazing to me. Even this was on the business side, sponsorship and ticketing and obviously marketing and merchandise, but there were so many elements that as someone who's been a consumer of soccer and followed it, never even really sat to think like, oh, what does the back end look like for this, products to exist in a way, for people to watch and all of those things. So that was, kind of my first internship, and I really loved it and felt, so grateful to have the opportunity to be there.
And then what were some of your different roles throughout your time at Austin? Because I know you switched around a little bit. And what do you think some of the key, I guess, attributes you would call it towards actually being able to move into different roles and in kind of new areas of the company as a whole and being able to just adapt and move on with it?
Yeah, for sure. So I'll share too a little bit because I think it's relevant to this of kind of that was my internship. And then when I was able to come back full time, I wore a lot of different hats, which was great. So after my internship, I had been offered to return because then I was going back to school to redo my senior year, basically. And I had been offered a role to return full time after graduation as business strategy coordinator. And I really loved Harrison. I loved the club. Andy was great, but it felt so niche. And there were already so many departments of the club that I had seen, where I didn't know much about it. And I was like, wow, yes, really enjoyed this business strategy role, but it's like, I feel like there's so many pieces that I still don't know. And if I stay in this very specific role, I'm missing out on other opportunities to learn more broadly what it takes to run a club, essentially. And really at that point, I was just enamored to be part of a club and was just so eager to learn as much as I could. And so I didn't want to limit myself to a very kind of specific trajectory within that. And so I actually held off for a while on accepting the role and was kind of, as we spoke about earlier, my network from school and different people that I could lean on to, run questions by, get their thoughts on this, that, and the other. And really loved the club, but just didn't want to limit myself. And actually, it was a conversation with Charles Alchek, who is the second in command at MLS and president of MLS Next Pro. He played soccer at Harvard, and I was, lucky enough to get connected with him. And I was kind of talking him through my dilemma. Then he said, well, why don't you talk to Andy about being his special assistant? I've had a special assistant. It's, a role that I currently have filled, but why don't you talk with him about doing that for you? And so I reached out to Andy. I said, hey, crazy idea. Let me know your thoughts. And he basically was like, yeah, let's do it. Like, anybody that would work with me would also have to work with our sporting director, who at the time was Claudio Reyna. So we had an overlap during my internship. He was like, anyone that would need to support me would also need to support our sporting director. Like, why don't you come into the office, meet him, and we'll go from there. And I went in. It was winter break, so I was back in Austin, and went in, met Claudio, and a week later signed off on my offer letter. And so then I started full-time after graduation just a few months later and loved it. So I found that my 85% of my work was with Claudio on the team side, which I actually really, really loved. Like, I'm so grateful that I got to be on the team side, because that's obviously what has led me to be doing what I am today. And I really, really love it. So I was out of the training center. I was not every trip, but traveling with the team on different things. And at the start, it was really supporting him and other executives, and Andy, obviously, on the business side with different special projects, different things to be involved in. And I worked very closely with Andrew Delalo, our director of sporting operations. So it really allowed me to just have this big picture look of what it took to operate things. I was able to be privy to different conversations that otherwise, if I was the business strategy coordinator, would not have had the access to, or have developed the relationships with the department heads that I was able to now. So it was a way to get myself in rooms and in conversations and in projects to really maximize my learning. So it's really, and I honestly, like, I'm kind of a nerd for all of it. So I was really just eager to learn and help in whatever way I could, whether that was Claudio as sporting director, whether that was our director of player personnel, Sean Rubio, Andrew Delalo, Dave Tenney. Like, I just wanted to help wherever I could. And so I don't know. I think that answered your question of like some of those different hats. I know I kind of
that's great.
It off a little bit, but yeah.
And then getting into, so obviously when you first came in, Austin FC is just getting off the ground, and then you were obviously a vital role as a part of the building out the second team. So can we get into the second team that you were actually hands-on there? So how was that experience of building out basically a fresh team?
Yeah, no, it was great. I'm really, so I essentially was kind of like running the project management of getting all those pieces. And I give thanks to Claudio for kind of giving me that responsibility, because I think he saw I was, hungry to help in any way I could. And this was a couple years in. So obviously that trust had been developed, and I felt really grateful to get to oversee some of that. And so, yeah, we started pretty early, almost like 9 months to a year before the actual launch. And it was having to figure out a lot of different elements of that. It was because we had St. David's Performance Center as our training center, and it was both for the first team and the academy, 2 separate buildings. And now with MLS Next Pro, it's a whole other professional team. And so it at the time had not been built out for 2 professional teams. So having to be creative with how that works. But we essentially would have, regular meetings with department heads on the first team and academy side of kind of understanding our goal and doing it. I think there are a couple of different ways that you can approach your second team you can want to be competitive and win. You can want to mainly have it be academy players and giving them experience. It can be an opportunity for first teamers on the fringe to get playing time. I think there are a lot of different ways you can approach it. So defining that and what made sense for us, but then also some of the logistics from a standpoint of, okay, where are we going to find space here for like parking for the players, a locker room for the players, a coaching room for the second team staff. How are we going to do food? Because, the MLS CBA requires breakfast and lunch required, but we don't necessarily have to. But do we want to set ourselves up differently? How do we want to approach the scouting? Is it domestic? Is it international?
I know like the stadium was a big issue at the time, trying to figure out where do we find a stadium, how do we do this.
Exactly. The stadium, the staffing, how many coaches, like how is, so many different considerations. And so, yeah, it was a lot of, and like, again, none of these things move forward as well without the people who also took the time. There's a lot of conversations, there's a lot of problem solving, not just for myself, but everybody involved. And so then, the team launched and I became kind of less hands-on from there. We then had operational people, Peyton Cabot, who's the director of like Austin FC2 operations and academy operations. Once it was up and running, became pretty self-sufficient, which was great. And, they went on to win the MLS Next Pro Cup in their first year, which was really awesome. And I'm so happy for all the players and the coaches. Brett and Dennis and Jason are great, the coaches, and all of the staff and all the players. So, yeah, I think it was a cool thing to, because in effect, it was taking some of the different things that I'd observed and learned from years prior, working in this role, working with, executives within the sporting department side, and then getting to kind of culminate that in a project of like, okay, I'm going to take what I applied and like, now let's think this big picture, how are we going to build out this professional team in a way. And so, yeah, it was more from a project management standpoint, but I think, being part of all those conversations and helping lead it and guide it and move things forward was an invaluable experience for sure. And, it was good to see the team be successful in its first year, and credit to everybody who worked on it, both before and after the launch of the team.
And before we get into your current role, I want to get this right. So you were recognized as the Sports Business Journal's New Voices Under 30. And so what does that feel like to get that achievement? And how do you see yourself kind of moving forward along with getting that award?
Yeah, no. It's great for sure. I think I'm not motivated necessarily by recognition or like, oh, I got, it's always a nice moment to be recognized. There's been a lot of time and energy that has been put into it. So for sure, it's nice that I have, people in my corner and people advocating for me and giving me opportunities. And no, I'm very grateful for it. Again, it's, for me, it's nothing without the, people who came before me to pave the way, but also supported me as I figured things out and gave me opportunities and gave me a seat at the table. So it's definitely more of a we did this than an I did this in my head. But very appreciative for the recognition, of course. And honestly, just continue day to day to try and show up and do good work. And, the chips will fall where they may. But for me, it's more just focusing on what I do and what I can control and taking it day by day to just show up for the team in the way that I can.
And so now you've done a switch into the women's game, so a full 180, I guess you could say. Let's get into your new role, the team environment, and really you've really just gotten started. So just some of the first experiences that you've been able to have so far.
For sure. So yeah, I'm Chief Soccer Officer now at Gotham. I work very closely with our general manager, Yael Averbush West, who is amazing. I've got nothing but amazing things to say about her. And our chief of staff, Sarah Hassoun, head coach Juan Carlos Amoros, and his coaching staff. All of the staff are great. And so essentially what my role looks like is I work very closely, I oversee salary cap compliance, adherence to that, all of the different roster rules in terms of mechanisms of signing players, releasing players, all of kind of the paperwork that comes with that, visa stuff for the players, international slots, discovery list, all of those kind of mechanisms, but working really closely with our GM and our head coach in terms of roster strategy, the signings that we want to make, the ways that we want to approach the roster. Obviously, they just had a super successful season. So wanting to continue to push that forward and all of those pieces. And so I think even with what really attracted me to this as well was sort of at the tail end of probably the last year with Austin FC, I got much more closely embroiled into the salary cap piece, the roster rules piece. And for me, that's what I found that I loved. So again, I had sort of been in this generalist role supporting our department heads at Austin and different things, but knew eventually, I couldn't necessarily do that forever. I wanted to have a direction that I went, and knew I didn't want to be a coach. I didn't want necessarily to do operations or month-book performance. And so I was kind of sitting in this space, and I got to work closely with our then interim sporting director, and Sean Rubio, who's now technical director at Toronto. But he and I had worked very closely for the years prior. And when he became interim sporting director, I worked with him really closely, and he leaned on me a lot to kind of support him in the ways that he had supported Claudio. And so I got much more tied into it immediately. I think, especially with the economics background, I was like, oh, I love this. Like, this is what I want to do. I kind of had the answer to the question that had been sort of lingering in the back of my head for a few years of like, okay, where do I go from here? What direction does this really take me in? It immediately was like, oh yeah, I like the roster stuff and the salary cap and all of the roster rules. There's like such a fun strategy to it that I kind of like, of trying to, everyone's working within the same limits. And there's kind of this competitive piece of, wanting to maximize that and be the best within the confines. And you got to strategize in the right way to really have those competitive advantages. So that's sort of the background too of what prepared me, I think, for this role. And so now I, continue doing that and love it so much. Just working with the numbers, with the roster strategy, and working with Yael is amazing. And Flan and Sarah and everybody is great. So yeah, it's been early days still. It's Jan 1. It's been a busy couple months. So we pretty much got started right away with the NWSL draft. That was, I think, week 1, or maybe right after the first week of being here. We flew from New York to Anaheim and had a few days there that were nonstop at work rate. And we had the draft, which was amazing. And then we flew back, and then pretty much all of February I was out of the
We were speaking
state.
before the call. It was just craziness.
Yeah, so we were in Florida at IMG Academy for 3 weeks, and then came home to New York for 3 days, and then just got back from Colombia for another 2 weeks. So it's been a crazy month and a crazy start to it, but honestly, I've been loving it. Like, the people that I work with, the work that I get to do, and just the club has such ambitions from ownership all the way through the coaches and the staff and the players. So for me, it's a super exciting time to be part of the club, and I just feel so grateful that they gave me this opportunity to be a part of it and hopefully contribute to the growth and the success of the team.
So you hinted at Gotham having a successful year last year. Obviously, they had the NWSL championship. Normally, when you're coming in as a new staff member, sometimes it's normally after a little bit of a rough patch or a rough season. But this is completely different. You're actually coming after a successful season. So where do you see your role now contributing into progressing from here? I guess that's a difficult point to start at.
Yeah, for sure. No, credit to Yael and the team and the staff, because they especially, I think, where they came from the year prior, they finished bottom of the table to then winning it all. Like, they've clearly done an amazing job, and I just want to be able to come in and further support and further push the needle forward day by day. Because again, everyone really has high ambitions to, we want to be the global capital of soccer. And, being in a market like New York, where, it's such a large sports market, we want to capitalize that and on the success of the team. And we do want to make it the global capital of soccer. And so yeah, just contributing in any way I can to kind of further push things forward, push the standards forward, push expectations forward, create the best player experience on the pitch and off the pitch for players, of really just day by day pushing things along and setting the standard. And I think taking my experiences that I have from Austin, of where, again, it's a very highly functioning club, and kind of from day one, and the people that were brought in, especially at the start, like, really just shaped my understanding. And again, I speak primarily on the sporting side just because that's where I had most of my experience. Also, people on the business side are amazing as well. But I think just in terms of specifically of my experiences working 90% at the training center with the team side, like, I think what's been helpful is having that experience and being able to take so many of those things that I've learned and bring them to Gotham to hopefully, continue to just day by day chip away, work humbly, and make it the global capital.
We've spoken about your time at Austin, obviously on the men's side of the game, and now Gotham on the women's side. What are the biggest differences or even similarities for that point on and off the field between kind of the two levels of the game? And really, they're both such high levels in terms of where they're at, but I'm sure you've now been able to see the differences and the similarities. So can we get into that?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. I think one thing that is interesting enough, I think, again, MLS has been around since I think 96 or 97. I think it's 96. I should know this. And women's soccer here in the States has, I think, had a more kind of tumultuous history in a way. Obviously, the Yates report came out a few years ago about just kind of what the landscape was of women's pro soccer and some of the abuse that was happening. And so I think, if you think of NWSL, I think, oh, I should also know what year this NWSL.
We're quizzing you here, yeah.
I know, I think somewhere around like 2015, maybe that's so off, but I think in terms of, because you have done the PS before, and there have been different iterations of pro women's soccer. And so I think some of the difference that I've seen, at least, and again, my only other experience is at Austin FC. So just from my experience, I think there are exciting opportunities at Gotham to just from some of the, like, how do I word this? Of like, professionalization is not the right word. I think MLS is so far developed as a league and still has so much.
Yeah, much farther ahead.
Yeah, and because it's has a decade, 2 decades more of time to develop and stuff, and so I see opportunities for the club and the league to continue to learn things and move forward. But I think the rate of growth right now of NWSL, it is, MLS is also growing like crazy. I see the rate of growth right now quicker than the men's side, I think. Maybe that's tough to say with obviously Messi being here, and okay, so maybe both are growing very, very quickly.
But I think on the MLS side, you already have sort of that structure in place for NWSL. The structure is growing, and the league, and the players, so everything is just like 10 times. It just becomes chaos.
I think exactly, and it's like I spoke earlier a bit about the systems, and just like how falling back on these. I think just some of the like buttoning ups on different systems and procedures to be just world class. And again, credit to everybody who works in operations, both for Gotham and NWSL. Like, people are pushing things forward, and it's hard to kind of keep up sometimes to the rate of growth, but everyone's been doing an amazing job. I see I see a ton of opportunity, exciting times ahead to really establish NWSL and Gotham as continue to establish them as the top league in the world and top club, hopefully. So I don't know. It was kind of a roundabout way of answering your question, but more to say, I just think, that the continued development of it is just at a different state in its growth than MLS is. And so there are just differences that go along with that.
I think you look at the NWSL as almost like a startup, and the MLS is a little bit more of a corporate built-up company. They've just got they're having growth, but that's through different factors. I think NWSL, the entire thing is growing at once, and I think that's where you sort of get some of that chaos. But I think over the years, as time goes by, you start to figure out those systems and the operations and the way you do things, and I think it starts to smoothen out, and then you'll still have that kind of continual growth because of the US game, the women's game as a whole. I think that's where you get it.
Yeah, I think you explained it perfectly. I think that is perfectly. NWSL kind of in the startup mode, and MLS is a bit more established as a corporate entity in a way. But very exciting times for both, for sure. So, wants to keep an eye on.
We've spoken about some of your roles and your sort of day-to-day activities, but can we get a day in the life? What does a day in the life of Zayne look like at the moment?
Yeah, I would say my day in the life in the last month has looked pretty different. It was a lot of, I'll give you an insight into kind of what one here in market looks like and what one on the road in Colombia or Florida. It was a lot of times wake up, go down to team breakfast. Right after that team meeting, they would go and do kind of activation or gym. I would shoot some emails, do some work, and then once training started, I'd make my way over to the field, watch training, team lunch, sit and work, usually with Yael in a room at the hotel or at the lobby, and sit and work until dinner, get dinner, do some more work. Oh, we were very intentional too about trying to get a run in after training too. Like at IMG was nice because there was no bus to catch, you're like there on campus. So there's a bit more flexibility. So we would try and go get a run in or get some sprints in, something to get some energy out, and just keeps, sitting at a computer for a long time throughout the day. And we just needed to be able to break it up. And that was kind of a day in the life there. It was, a little bit different because I feel like your day gets chopped up in a bit because you've got team meetings, then team meal or team outing versus just, you sit at the office or the training center getting things done. A day in the life here, I haven't had one yet from a standpoint of like when we're actually training. So players arrived for, preseason report day, and then the next day we went to Florida. But before that, for the month of January, it's wake up, drive to the training center. So I actually live in the city, but the training center is in Jersey. So drive to the training center, sit, work, get some stuff done. I imagine once training's over, I like to be able to catch training or at least a little bit of it. Ideally all of it. And training, back, work. We've got a new chef and dietitian, which would be great. So we'll have breakfast and lunch at the training center, which will be a plus. And yeah, just a lot of works, conversations, getting things done, meetings, calls. But every day is different. I think it really depends on the context of like where we are at in the season. So, before the draft, a lot of our focus was on the draft and do we trade for picks and what are we looking at and what do we want, versus preparing for preseason was very different because we had 7 U.S. women's national team players get called up for the Gold Cup. And so how do we bring in training players and trialists who can keep the environment strong and high level and come in and are a good personality fit? And so managing all those different pieces from a positional standpoint, from an experience standpoint, people that can really contribute. And so I think just depending on the context of where you are, obviously we've got season starting soon. Our window is open till April. So, what a day in my life looks like and is the structure of it will largely remain the same in terms of my rhythm, but the content of what I'm working on will vary greatly, kind of just depending on injuries on the roster and what that looks like, and training players and just depending on where we are at in our season. Obviously, the window's open for another month or so, month and a half. And so once the window closes, things will probably look very different for me too in terms of what takes up my day-to-day thought processes.
Sounds like you have a lot of those systems down pat. It's just a matter of all the content changing, but you still have that structure.
Definitely need the structure still. I'm still building out some of the processes that I need to, and I'll feel a lot better once they are built out for sure.
We'll get into, I always mention that the football industry as a whole is a roller coaster. You constantly have these highs and lows, and they feel quite extreme compared to some other industries. What are some of the challenges that you've had along, it can be your career, working career, playing career, or even just your personal life, that you've been able to overcome to help better you in for now and for the future?
Yeah, for sure. I think I dealt with in the past a lot of like some like lingering chronic health issues. So I think from a personal standpoint, that had been tough to manage, but I'm in such a better spot now, and like my healing has been very robust, which is good. But I think it's helpful. It was helpful for me. And again, I always want to find a silver lining, even in tough. I think there's always a lesson in there and something to like serve you. And so for me, it was, I think my priorities at my age have shifted so much. Like I'm a completely different person before I was sick, before college, than I am now. And I think when you lose so many of the things that even temporarily matter to, I don't know if there's a shift in a mindset, there's a shift in priority that I think has been super helpful for me. And I keep a pretty small circle. I don't really go out. I just really enjoy working and helping, build something that matters to me and matters to others. And I think I've had to learn resilience and just taking things day by day sometimes, and trusting in the process, having patience, different things. So yeah, I think you're spot on. This football world, both as a player, as a coach, as a staff member, especially when you're on the team side and traveling with the team and having late nights, and it's inevitable you're going to run into adversity. And having the tools to, I think, address that head on and take it on the chin and take the good things that you can from it, I think allows you to weather the storm a little bit, because again, it's inevitable. Things are not always going to work out. A lot of times, day to day, there are different things that you're having to manage and work through that weren't anticipated or, you know, weren't planned for, and just having the flexibility to not necessarily go with the flow, but work within a chaotic environment sometimes where you're managing a lot of different pieces that are moving. I think it's hard to work in this space if you're not able to kind of bend versus break in a way.
No, that's a good analogy. I like that. If someone's listening to this and finds inspiration in either your story or your background or how you've been able to build your career, do you have advice for someone like that you might be able to help spur them on and follow a similar journey to yours?
Yeah, I would say, I think if you are passionate about something, not to say just like find a way, because it's not as simple as that, way, but like continue to persevere, continue to persist. I think I think this is actually something that I guess I consider her like an aunt to me, and she's had a successful career consulting for McKinsey, funny enough, just based on what we were talking about a bit earlier, but it's great. And now does some like organizational psychology stuff. Something she told me in college, which I think really helped me, is I had some of these conversations with people of, don't be afraid to, you know, in a way, contact at a club or an organization or whatever you want to do. Like, don't feel like you just have to reach out to the person with the same amount of experience to you or closest in age to you. I think if it's something that you're passionate about and you've done the research on, and it's something that you want to pursue, don't be afraid to shoot an email or shoot a LinkedIn message to the sporting director or the head coach. And because, you know, if you don't ask, it's never going to be yes. You know, it might still be a no, and that's fine. And I think you have to understand that and have that context. But just because of your age or your experience, if it's something that you're intentional about, don't be afraid to create the connections with those people, and obviously recognizing the fact that they may have tough schedules or may not be able to get back to you or can't in this moment. But I think don't discount yourself just because of, you know, your age, your experience. I think if you've got the right intention and the right tools and you want to make good things happen and you're eager to learn and you can leave ego out of it, just shoot for the stars, honestly. Don't limit yourself. And you're way more capable than what you think, than you think you are. And I think sometimes it takes yourself having to be in that room where you're nervous, or it takes you having to step up with that presentation or coach in that networking event. Just step in with your full confidence and full belief in yourself, and good things will happen from there.
And if we look at your career or even your personal life, and we look 5 to 10 years in the future, where do you think you'll be? It can be the footballing world, or how do you look at it?
Yeah, I would really love, I really hope, and I'm fingers crossed that I still am in the football world, because I think this is, especially, you know, over the past year or so, what I've discovered in terms of this piece of roster strategy and salary cap and roster rules. Like, I really can't get enough of it. And I nerd out for it, and I'm so grateful to be doing it. So yeah, I mean, I hope I'm still doing similar things, and just in an environment that's challenging me and a project that I'm passionate about. And yeah, hopefully more of the same, more lessons, more experiences, some championship wins would be nice. And yeah, just continuing to grow every day, work with people that I care about and that push me to be better. And yeah, that would be great. Just more of the same would be great for me. Yeah.
And we'll get into the last quick fire questions here. So first, your childhood club, the team you supported when you were young.
Manchester United.
All right, I like it. Favorite quote or saying? Do you have one that you just sort of go back to?
Yeah, I've got two. You are what you do every day, and how you do anything is how you do everything.
Solid. I like those. Those are good. Top
Thanks.
recommendations for, we'll go with Austin, because I know you spend the most amount of time there. So whether it's your favorite food spot or just places that someone has to go see.
Yeah, food spots, Swift's Attic on Congress and Wu Chow on West 5th. I think in general, like a boat day on Lake Austin, or doing Ski Shores, which is a restaurant on Lake Austin. Silver Park, just walking the trail. just getting outside, doing something downtown or on the water is great for sure.
And do you read? Do you have a favorite book?
I don't read a ton, but I do have a couple favorite books in this. I
Yeah,
wish
let's
I
hear
was
it.
a reader. I always wish I was. But I did, especially on my year off, I did read some books. Fearless is a book that was written about the Leicester City Premier League winning season.
Yeah.
Very interesting in terms of just how they built their roster and how they approach it with the scouting, and very, very interesting if you want insight kind of into the steps that brought all of that together. Also Shoe Dog about the building of Nike, and is always very interesting. But I would say those two in this moment.
And do you have a favorite hobby besides football? I know everyone always answers soccer. Yeah, I go play soccer. But do you have something to just break the chain of constantly being around the game?
Yeah, I also really like basketball, like something that's always been, I grew up being a Celtics fan as well, and I've got a hoop like at a park near me, so that's always something that takes off a load. I really love music too. I'm constantly listening to music and looking for new music. So those are my two kind of non-soccer things that I spend my time on as well.
And if you could sit down with one person, dead or alive, for a meal, who would it be?
Ooh, good question.
You can answer. So it's gone to like 3 people. I would say 3 people's the max. If you have
Okay.
another one, yeah.
Right now, maybe not exciting. I'd love to just sit down and have dinner with my mom and my dad, and because they're back home in Austin, they're coming back out for our first game of the season. But I would just love to be able to sit and have dinner with them right now.
And then do you have someone in the football realm? Let's say
in the football realm. Yeah, I mean, for me, Sir Alex Ferguson would be amazing. Yeah, I would say Sir Alex. Arsene Wenger, I think, is, again, these are not probably.
Yeah, those are the 2 most common ones, I would say. But it's good. It's good to see that it's a similar trend.
Yeah, that's what I would say. Trying to think if there's anybody else top of mind. I mean, again, maybe off the Leicester City stuff, Claude Ranieri, the then Leicester City manager. Yeah, not sure. I'll leave it at those 3 for now.
No, that's great. So before we wrap things up, do you have any last words, and then we can head out?
Yeah, not necessarily. Like, big thank you for this, and yeah, it was great to share some of my story and support Gotham. Everybody, season starts March 15th with the Challenge Cup against San Diego, and yeah, all good things. Just hoping for a good season and excited to get started soon. We should kick off the new season. Yeah.
No, that's great. I really appreciate your time, and I look forward to speaking again soon.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks, Chad.